the orders speed up and the bids get aggressive. And so that gives me confidence to, hit a position and start to protect my average and just stay with it as long as it stays strong like this.
I never really tried to go for these home run type of trades.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Trading Takes with myself, Sam, presented to you by Investors Underground. Now, tonight we've got another very special episode with two very special guests. Over the past couple of years, it really seems like scalping has evolved into hyperscalping, and that's because there are guys out there making hundreds of thousands of dollars, trading numerous tickers a day, trading them numerous times, and achieving levels of consistency that all of us can aspire to. Tonight's episode, we're going to do a deep dive into that and explore it even further. Please welcome to the show, Bo and Herv, or Herv and Bo, whichever way around you two prefer. How are you both doing? Welcome to the show.
Doing great.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you for coming on. And so let's kick it off with the usual by brief introduction. Tell us a bit about yourselves. Herv, you're in the middle of the screen, so you kick it off.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, I just started trading in 2019, kind of part-time, after finding some trading YouTube videos online, just via YouTube algorithm. And by 2021, I went full-time and been full-time ever since, and really just developed a scalping style of trading, and it's worked out really well for me.
Yeah, very well. Yeah, and what about you, Bo?
Yeah, similar. I'm a COVID trader. I came in 2020 when I was home from work, and I had a bad injury too, so I had nothing to do but sit on my butt. So I just went down the YouTube trail and Twitter and Discord and just went full send and found Herv early on. Herv has been a mentor of mine since, when was that? 21 or so, Herv? And we've been trading together ever since. And then it's been fun because our styles are very, very similar, obviously, because we trade together. But I think we just kind of also have a similar disposition towards this, and our intuition is kind of developed in the same way. So we've had some really good synergy working together.
Yeah, brilliant. So how did you meet?
I saw him. We were in a small Discord, and I was just kind of, trying to pay attention to the folks in there. And Herv caught my eye with the ideas he was putting out there and the style of trading that he was doing. So I studied it for a while, paid attention to what he was doing, and then one day I just DM'd him and asked him if he would jump on a call with me and let me pick his brain, and we just became fast friends.
Nice. That's such a cool story. And now, I know you often both get referred to as scalpers. I mean, firstly, is that fair? And then perhaps, I don't know, Herb, again, if you could kick it off, perhaps give us a bit of an intro again into your style of trading.
Yeah, I think that I naturally have a low risk mentality, or what I perceive to be low risk. And so I've never taken, these big swings and just averaged down into something, maybe in the beginning of my career, but I've never really tried to go for these home run type of trades. I really have developed a sense for momentum and patterns in level 2 and tape and all these things kind of combined to really understand when that momentum burst is happening and trying to time things right, get a couple of cents here and there, and just rinse and repeat.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've seen your charts. They're magnificent, to be honest. And I mean, it looks like, is it quite literally just looking for that quick 2% move or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit more to it. There's zones like daily levels, pre-market levels, There are definitely targets that I try to shoot for, but and so if we haven't achieved those targets, then I might keep trying to scalp it until, either we're overextended or we have kind of completed the agenda that I have seen in the chart, so to speak.
Yeah, that sounds great. And Bofo, would your answer pretty much be the same?
It would. And to answer your question, I do think that calling us scalpers is fair. However, there's this new term, hyperscalping, and people like to say, "Oh, you're a hyperscalper," and well, sometimes I am if the move is only a quick burst of a move. But to Herv's point, we're trying to position ourselves for whatever the move offers, and so sometimes that's a hold for a few seconds, and sometimes that's a hold for 20 minutes or an hour, and we kind of do all of that intraday.
Yeah, and I've seen, to be fair, I always wonder with the term scalping, and obviously, like, hyperscalpers become very popular. And to be honest, it's probably become popular because of you guys, and obviously, like, perhaps your extended friendship group as well. Like, 2 years ago, I don't think I'd ever heard of the term hyperscalper. Then all of a sudden, I guess it probably is just the success of you guys. So, on that, so obviously, like, you're saying that your mindset, suits perhaps that type of trading. What do you think is perhaps a little bit different then about yourselves? Both, you take that one first, perhaps.
I was one of those guys that struggled early in my career. It kind of took me a while of trial and error to figure out a style of trading that did suit me. I tried swing trading, but then I found I couldn't sleep. I was waking up at 4 a.m. because that's when stocks start moving, and I'm impatient. So when stuff would go against me a little bit, I would get freaked out. I would sell it. So it did take me a minute to try to find, something that did kind of suit me better. And I kind of found this middle zone. I also, now that I think back about how I found profitability and how a lot of people find profitability, if you think about scalping, especially if you're just doing the micro timeframes and you're trying to get small wins, just reading the flow of the order book and the level 2. In my mind, I can get hundreds of attempts a day, right? And so that's tons of data points. Not only am I going to establish whether I've got a good edge or not, because, if I have 300 trades, well, that's a pretty robust data set to say I've got 55% win rate. Where if I'm only taking 3 trades a day, well, I've got to do that for months to get the same amount of data, right? And I also look at it like mental reps, right? So I'm learning a lesson every trade I take. And so I think there's kind of this, for someone like me, it's felt like a faster ramp to profitability by flooding myself with all these repetitions and learning skill set on risk management and establishing an edge on a micro time frame. And then the way my career has played out, that's allowed me to then step back. And now I can play a little bit bigger time frame. I can go for a little bit bigger moves with the foundation of the skills that I learned on the smaller time frames.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great point. That's something I think about quite a lot as well. Like just the edge someone has by taking so many trades a day. Like you said, if you take 300 and you win on 175 of them, for the average trader, actually, like I'm taking absolutely nowhere near that. I'm taking less than 10% of that, maybe even 5% of that a day. Like obviously I have to play out over a longer run, which is why I just love what I see from you guys, because it just seems to be that consistent ability to just draw out, green day after green day. And I don't, I'm not selling you short there, because I just have so much respect for that. Herb, do you have anything to add to that? Is there anything you think you're a little bit different and why this style suits you so well?
Yeah, another thing that kind of comes to mind is like whenever you see a move go from, say, $4 to $5, it doesn't just usually doesn't go straight up. There's ups and downs, ups and downs. So while you may get from point A to point B, in between, there's, you know, pullbacks, there's knives, there's all sorts of things. So with scalping, like you don't have to necessarily hold through all of that, you know, the whole mess in between the two, you know, points of price. So with scalping, you can actually end up making more money than if you had just bought it at 4 and sold at 5, because, you know, you're buying the dips, you know, you're selling the pops over and over. So that's really why scalping to me is so effective.
Yeah, and that's another thing I think about, because there's so many times as typically I'm probably on the opposite side of your trades, which it sounds like I'm probably getting ripped if I'm on the opposite side. But often, like, I find that I get to like live the trade. I could almost trade the trade twice. In that,
Yep.
if I was perhaps doing like what you said, covering into flushes and then shorting pops, actually it would add perhaps an hour or 2 hour onto that trade instead of holding through, waiting for the big picture. I mean, even though there's a good chance it's going to be, you know, like I'm playing off it's a typical small cap being higher day early, lower day being late day. But obviously, like you said, it's not as linear as a straight line from, you know, A to Z. And I mean, that's something that I've definitely been, you know, looking to add into my repertoire. Now, the thing that I suppose as a good follow-up question, though, in my opinion, for that is, if you're obviously trying to scalp, and that's great when you do get perhaps something that's ebbing and flowing a little bit more, but there's going to be times, perhaps, do you ever miss out on perhaps a bigger move, or perhaps you get to the end of the move and actually you haven't got as much size because you've been trying to scalp and then it doesn't get that pullback?
All the time. Yeah. Yeah. You know, to Herv's point, for that move, for something that does end up making a big move like that, it's very often that I'm not catching size on the meat of it, where, you know, you have to be an extremely skilled scalper and be hitting that edge with a high win rate all the way through that move to make more than if you just bought and hold. But the trade-off there is only a handful out of a lot make that full move, but without stopping you out, right? So the trade-off is, yeah, I might not make as much on that big ripper that I could have held full size for the whole move, but at the same time, I'm going to make really good money on the ones that don't do it, right? Because I'm making those incremental wins all along the way rather than getting ultimately stopped out.
Yeah, yeah. And Herb, would you say the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I've you know, expanded my playbook and tried to hold things for a little bit longer, I definitely have fallen victim to, you know, being up huge, holding something instead of scalping it, and it comes all the way back on me, and you know, I have nothing to show for it. And
Yeah,
so there are times when I'm like, man, I just should be a scalper and stick to that for right now.
yeah.
That
And
happened to you today, didn't it?
Yeah, I did.
what did it happen on today?
Foxo. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was being quite brutal at times. Just for
Yeah.
the record, we're recording on the 12th of November, just in case anyone wants to refer to that chart. And I mean, on this start, before we go into it in a little bit more detail, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like a lot of fun. I mean, clicking buttons is a lot of fun. And I think like the biggest issue for a lot of traders is actually they want to click buttons, but perhaps their playbook doesn't lend itself to clicking lots of buttons. You guys don't have that. I bet you're clicking all. I expect your keyboard and mouses get pretty tired, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do, and we, you know, just to get into the weeds a little bit here, Thinkorswim TD got bought by Charles Schwab. Well, prior to that, TD had order limits. Well, it was per week, but we all knew what those order limits were because we were on a really hot day. We'll blow right through them in half a day, you know. So that was something that we had to be mindful of, and it was also something to consider when we had to think about what broker we want to use for this style of trading. So yeah, you know, there's a good balance to be found there, because it can very quickly become gambling for people, it can very quickly become just the slot machine, right? Like I just want to try again and try again and try again. And if you're not disciplined and really honed into your edge and mentally sharpened there, you can dig a hole so fast trying to scalp like this. Like you have to be dialed in to do it. But to your point, it's very fun. I love it. I mean, it's what brings me back to the market every day. You know, it's hard to walk away for lunch. It's hard to step away to do anything. I mean, not only is it our passion, but yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah, yeah. And so one thing I'm keen, obviously, to try and dissect as well, Herv, and obviously you said it's fair to define you guys as hyperscalpers, but in terms of those scalps that you make and the trades that you make, is there a broad playbook, or is it just all kind of come under one type of trade as such?
Yeah, I would say that it is very broad. I mean, in terms of scalping, there are 1 minute flags, so 5 minute flags, like wick reclaim type scalps, um,
Trendline.
short crap, like a high a day, something's got a lot of momentum and you got a huge wick, and then it's reclaiming, you've got the short trap type scalps. So it's really, there are tons of signals that tell me that I should take a position, and maybe it's a short-lived type of scalp, or maybe it's something that I'm trying to work myself into a longer hold for.
Yeah. And both, is that the same answer to you?
I think so. It kind of brings me back to what I was saying before about getting those repetitions. Stan Ivanov, who is well known and loved in our community, Herv and I have gotten to know him over the past year or two, and he's imparted a lot of wisdom on us. And one thing that he's talked to us about quite a bit is like a system trader versus a discretionary trader. And there's been a lot of debate online and on Twitter about, one or the other, and one's better, and so on and so forth. But Stan has always had the position that for experienced traders, it's both. The really experienced trader, even a system trader, knows when to break his rules based on his experience and intuition. And one thing I love about how Herv and I trade is because we got all those reps and because we're getting so many reps every day, I feel like our intuition is thereby developed maybe even a little bit faster. And I would categorize both Herv and I as very intuitive traders. We don't have a system playbook. We don't have, a exact 2-to-1 risk to reward that we're keeping in mind. We don't have a specific percentage move that we're trying to get. We don't always just hold for our targets. We're dynamic with what the move is offering. And also to that point, we're dynamic with the setups that we see and the patterns that we see. I can't always tell you exactly why I like a look, but what's interesting is if I like a look and then I'm like, oh, Herv, look at this. What do you think? And he's like, oh yeah, that does look good. Neither of us could probably tell you exactly why. It's just, we've just seen it so many times, and we just, know how to position ourselves for good risk to reward on that specific trade.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun for sure. No, absolutely. That's great thoughts. I know you both got a screen share ready. I think we should do a bit of a dive. I don't know who wants to go. Both, it looks like yours is ready.
Okay.
Let's have a dive into, like I said, we're recording on the 12th of November. I think this is was this on the 11th? Was this yesterday?
This was yesterday. Yeah. So when you said you wanted some stuff to share, I just went through the trading day that I had done yesterday, and I just found a couple of looks that I felt was, easy enough to explain. And so this is a snapshot of DJT. And the interesting thing about DJT is this is not really the typical type of name that I would trade probably 90% of the time. When something's got good range like this, and let's say it's like a mid cap in this 20 to 50 area, like we had with Drug in recent weeks, and there have been a couple others, DXYZ recently, I'll trade these, but they definitely behave a little bit different. And so anyway, just to give you an idea, the patterns a lot of times are very similar. So I'm zoomed in here on my 1 minute chart. We have this upper trend line, we have this lower trend line. It's kind of wedging down here under VWAP. If I scroll down and show you the 5 minute, this VWAP or this consolidation under VWAP is also kind of setting up right above the, major structure of the prior day's range too. So that's just a little bit of extra confluence, bigger picture on where it's setting up that gave me the idea that, this tried to flush down really hard. It reclaimed all the way back up. I think that might have even been a halt, the way that there's this gap in this candle here. Ultimately didn't follow through and stayed under VWAP. But then it came down here and put in this little higher low. Then we have another higher low. We put in a higher high. Okay, all of a sudden, now I see something that's failed to break down. It's tried to break down and it hasn't broken down. And so now when I see this get really tight in here, and now we have a higher low, well, this all of a sudden looks really good to me. Now with this coiled so tight, I can enter with very minimal risk, because I know if this wants to go up and kind of break out of this little wedge that it's wedging into right here, there's very little, to negate this pattern. It's only, maybe 15 cents of risk on something that's got quite a bit of range. So something like this, and Herv, I know looking at this, that this looks good too. If you saw this on your chart, you'd be switching over it to try to take a position, right? So I tried to cut off what happens from here just to give the illustration of like, this is what catches my eye, right? So to scroll down to what happened from this trade, and you can even see this is a study that doesn't always work, but for this one it did. This actually shows what my average is as I'm in the trade, this little dotted green line here, if you can see. So I ended up taking a position right here, and as it caught for the trend line break, we get this strong move through VWAP. VWAP on something like this, that's my target, that's what, 60, 70 cents of range on, what did I say, 10 or 15 cents of risk. So pretty good risk to reward. And what I'm watching right here as it's breaking out of this is the level 2 order book. I want to see how strong those bids are overwhelming the asks. And then when do they kind of sputter out? When do they kind of stall? When do sellers seem to gain a little bit of advantage? And when that happens, I'm at least taking some off. If I got a nice move away from my average, I might not take the whole thing off, but I'm going to take some off. And so that's kind of what happened here. You can see where my average stepped up right here, and that's where I took a scale. When this 1 minute flag failed to hold here on this pivot around the whole $1.33, I took a chunk off. But then, it consolidated sideways, gave us this nice flat top. So I stayed with my trade. My average is still down here at 32.60. No reason to panic out of that. And then when we started to push back up through it again, I took a little bit more off in case it double topped. And then when I saw another stall here, I took a little bit more off. You can see where that average came back up. And then once it got up here, this is just a really nice move. Maybe I got tired and wanted to go to another ticker, or maybe I just didn't want to leave it up on a side screen to worry about. So I took the whole thing off right here, and that ended up being a good idea because it ultimately faded back down. But this type of a look right here is something that I'm always going to be very interested in getting positioned for with such little risk, and pretty good move came out of it.
Yeah, awesome trade. And you touched on there, one of the number one questions that gets asked is about level 2 and how to read level 2, how to read obviously the prints going through on the tape as well. You two study it like in depth. Has it come down to intuition now, or would you be able to guide someone, do you think?
I think you can give someone kind of the principles of what to look for, right? And the analogy that I like to use a lot is like, let's say I'm a really good baseball hitter, right? And I can face pitchers that are throwing 90 miles an hour and have a pretty good batting average. Well, I can tell someone till I'm blue in the face what to look for and what they need to do and whatever. But it takes those repetitions of your own. It takes sitting in the batter's box and taking hacks at baseballs and striking out a bunch of times before you start to learn those lessons. And this feels similar to that. But you're exactly right. The order book, to me, the lower the time frame you get, the smaller the time frame you get, the more critical trading off the order book becomes. So it's crucial to how Herv and I trade, for sure.
Yeah, and just touching on so looking at the order book, do you have any extra tools like Bookmap or anything like that, or is it just pretty standard, whatever Thinkorswim or whatever your broker provides?
Yeah, it's standard, but I do like to use the ladder version. So most people have it montage, right? Like you've got your bids on one side, your asks on the other side, and that kind of spreads out where the orders are even in the same price rung. Then you have a ladder version where you have the price levels all the way up and down, and you kind of have your bids on the left and your asks on the right. I very much prefer that, and that's what I've just gotten used to. It just visually makes sense to me. I like to see price moving up and down the ladder, and then I can, in a sense, feel the ebb and flow of the tide. You know, who's winning that tug of war at any given time.
That's such a great explanation. And Herv, on this trade, I mean, anything to add? Do you like the look of this? Did you trade it yourself?
I didn't trade it myself. I was probably tied up with something else. I do like the look because, you know, what Bofo said, it's put in a big range. The consolidation is getting really tight. The risk is low. And there are also some other external factors, you know, to think about with GJT. It's going to be rangy, you know, it's going to be volatile during this time. So, you know, you are bound to get a decent sized move one way or another.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's probably another thing that's great about the style of trade, and like this, for example, is you're identifying a move and something with potential that can explode, but you're identifying it very early with that tight risk. You're not waiting for VWAP to hit, firm up, and then see if it can make a next leg into the day. Actually, you're taking something that I look at this and I'm thinking, actually, you found a very predictable way of finding something that you can take very tight risk on, and actually think, actually, we've got a good chance of it at least getting VWAP, and if we get any more, then I'll be there for that move, or I can actually, as the information in the picture grows, I can make decisions on that. So, I mean, I'm really liking this. I'm really liking what we had to say so
We're
far.
gonna turn you over to the dark side.
Well, I would love to. I mean, I love the idea. I do love the idea of it, and I've always talked about expanding my playbook, and then, you know, I chatted to Ed Barry a lot about it, perhaps a couple years ago. But like for me personally, I mean, I do pretty much the opposite. I mean, I like the idea of doing very little and just finding something that I can actually hold all day and be really patient on. And I don't know why. To be honest, why I gravitated to that, I couldn't tell you why, because I wouldn't particularly say that I'm a patient man in real life or anything like that. Anyways, enough about me. Bofo, was that the only one you've got? Have you got any others?
I found another little one on DJT later.
Cool.
Kind of a similar concept here, Herv. I mean, you see this flag right here. I know you would be interested in it too if I pulled it up, right? So again, I love trendline breaks. I think I love trendline breaks more than Herv does. I tend to position myself for trendline breaks more than he does. Sometimes I'll bring up an idea for a trendline break, and, you know, Herv doesn't like that it's on the backside. He doesn't like that, you know, this, that, or whatever. And that's fine, because sometimes it works for me and sometimes they don't. He's right a lot and sometimes I'm right. But anyway, this is another, you know, kind of had like a general, it's not a perfect trend line here, but like a general kind of wedge again shape. This one's a little bit more descending than the other one, but this shape of 1 minute flag, I just can't stay away from it. We've got a small little flat top here. It's after higher lows. It's, you know, we're coming tight against a trend line that I drew. So I love something like this. And again, below VWAP, this is the 1 minute. So 5 minute, this is the same context. This was the trade I took earlier. It kind of just continued to hold this bottom range here, higher low, nice, you know, trap candle there on the 5 where it failed to break down below 32.50. And now we sucked it back up. Almost a little 3-bar situation here on the 5. So I took a position in here. And this is an example of one, Sam, where it doesn't follow through so far, right? Like if I had tried to position for this and, I wanted to get 34 or 35 or some high a day test, never would have happened, right? But because I'm a scalper and because I just take what the move gives me, I was able to get this momentum burst, which I felt confident would happen the way that this set up with this flat top and this kind of like just rising scoop here on the EMA. And then you can kind of see the volume come in and the orders speed up and the bids get aggressive. And so that gives me confidence to, hit a position in, start to protect my average and just stay with it as long as it stays strong like this. So I was able to rip through VWAP, scale some out, and then ultimately, I think on this one, I did actually leave a portion on with a stop. And since my average was down here, I did get stopped out, but that's okay. I don't need a big move to make money. I do a bunch of these all the time. So I wanted to include this example just for one that, only gave us a single leg with no follow through.
Yeah, and just touching on that when you're saying obviously a single leg described on this one, but like in terms of like when you're entering a trade, how are you determining your profit targets? Or is it like or are you, like you're saying, like using your intuition, it's a continual like evolving picture and you're just changing as you get more and more information from the order flow?
Yeah, I'm going to use a quote from Herv actually a couple of years ago that's always stuck with me. I'll never forget this, Herv. And this was when I was trying to find profitability. I was still a struggling trader. The way Herb described to me that he enters a trade, he's like, I want to enter at the exact best price. Like I want to enter when it is immediately going in my favor away from my average. I'm not going to put some on in the middle of the range when I know it can probably come back. I'm going to wait until I enter exactly when it's in my favor. And that's always stuck with me. And I think that is what we try to do. We're watching this thing set up. We're not always, we take losses, right? It doesn't always work that way. But ideally, the way we manage our risk is we don't even think about this math of like 2 to 1 or 2 to 5 or whatever your risk to reward is. It's literally just, I want the minimum amount of risk as possible while catching the move that I expect to happen. And so, we're using that order flow. We're using the way the pattern's setting up. We're using the timing of the candles. Herv's actually taught me a lot about how price likes to behave early in a candle versus late in a candle and what it likes to do on the 1 minute versus the 5 minute and how they like to wait for the close of a previous 5 and then start ripping it on the next 5. And there are all these little things that we've learned and that give us some extra firepower for how we do our edge. That allow us to feel really confident about hitting that button and expecting what we want to see pretty much immediately.
Yeah. And I suppose that's the great thing about it as well is you know what you're expecting to see. So equally, you know what you don't want to see as well.
That's exactly right.
So again, you can just quickly exit the trade and move on. And I assume like with this example here, like you said, you've got the pop through VWAP. And I suppose, again, you're seeing perhaps not what you want to see in the, if this was going to test higher day, I expect it to stay a bit lighter and be able to float up. Whereas obviously it looks like it stalled a little bit around like the 34, 40s, 30s level.
Sure. Yeah. And, I mean, you kind of start to understand like moves that continue what they look like, right? Like this little 1 minute started to get really choppy. Like, yeah, it's kind of going higher, but this didn't really become any kind of constructive look, right? Like once it started getting choppy up here and then you start pulling back, well, all of a sudden when we pulled back under this 3250 here, that's not really a good looking flag anymore. That doesn't really look bullish like something that I would want to re-enter. Sometimes I think that in my head, if I want to stay with a trade, is this something that I would re-enter here? And if the answer is no, then maybe I don't need to stick with it, right? Yeah. So this could have, bounced here off of VWAP and sucked back up, but nothing really formed up here that looked very bullish again. So it was very easy for me to exit this trade, at least with the majority of my position. Now, maybe I let a runner just in case something wanted to happen, but the majority of my position, I'm going to be out at the very least when this pivot here didn't hold and we weren't forming up like a good looking flag, right? So I really just kind of, again, I'll miss moves. Stuff continues without me all the time, but Yeah, I'm kind of just using the order flow and who's winning that tug of war to just take most of my meat off the bone.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of actually that setup there is what I tend to look for actually in like a because I'm looking at the time as well, something around 2:30, like just for some sort of backside clear out type move, particularly when you've got on the 1 minute you've got like continual clear out, clear out, clear out, and it begins to look stuffy with like obviously the volume coming in as well.
Right, you got some people stopping out, and then you kind of reach the equilibrium again, and then it can fade off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this didn't look like a particularly great fade mine, but yeah, there's a scalp on the other side as well.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Herv, anything to? I mean, I know you didn't take this trade, but I mean, it sounds like the quote or whatever your comment was about entering it at the exact moment was powerful. I don't know if you could perhaps just add a little bit of info onto that as well, because that sounds like it really resonated with both of you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's just about being patient enough to let the pattern develop that you're, looking to scout. We're not just like, I'm not just deciding I'm going to take a trade just because. So, being patient enough to let the pattern develop and formulate a thesis for something, and then, um, kind of basic stuff, but identify, like what's the best risk level, and then trying to find, the point at which you can keep that risk level very low, but you also are pretty confident that, the trade is going to go in your favor as soon as you enter.
Yeah, and Herv, like, how much time do you typically have to make a decision? Like, I'm looking at this, like both are talking about like flags and stuff. It sounds like actually you do have a bit of time, but at the same time, if you're not watching this, how you can? It seems very difficult to see. It's not like you can set price alerts or anything because you're talking about levels that perhaps you hadn't thought of early in the morning. I don't know if you anything to add on to that.
I mean, it can happen very quick if you're not really paying attention to what's happening right in front of you. So, I mean, that's kind of why it's important to have, like Bofa has here, your trend lines drawn, levels and zones, um, making sure that you're kind of on the right side of the trade, and making sure that everything is in line before you decide to actually take that trade.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And yeah, thank you for. Sorry, both.
Sam, just to add, yeah, I miss if yeah, Herb and I a lot of times are on a voice channel together just so we can kind of share ideas and be looking at the market and have different eyes in different places. And if you listen to us, you would hear us getting frustrated that we missed trades all the time because we can't switch over fast enough. We might see something on a side screen and then getting it to our main active trader setup and kind of zooming in and making sure we're in tune with the tape. And it does take, I would say that takes 15, 20, 30 seconds sometimes to do. And a lot of times when you catch that look on your side screen, it could be going in a moment, right? Because I think there are other people that see the same things that we do and they're jumping on it too. So the other thing I'll say too, about these little setups and when it gets right down into that moment of where we might want to take an entry or not, something that's really kind of, I would say in the past several months, elevated my trading is my ability to kind of juggle in my mind several potential outcomes and what I'm going to do in each of those situations, right? So Herv mentioned earlier, one of our setups is like a wick reclaim. So if I see something really bullish, well, I'm going to be prepared for it to break out clean, but I'm also going to be prepared for them to maybe false break that out. I'm going to be prepared for them to flush it first. And where's that flush zone that I think will get soaked? Where do I think price is going to get soaked up for the trap back up, right? So there's 3 or 4 potential scenarios that can come out of any given setup that I might be able to take action on. And I need to think ahead about what I want to do in any one of those situations so that I'm not stuck deer in headlights.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Herv, do you want to take a look at sharing one of your trades, if that's all right? I know you got a couple lined up as well. Cool. I'll share your screen.
Okay.
There's a lot of arrows there.
Yeah,
a lot of executions.
This is going to look like a lot, but you know, on a typical hot day of momentum, this is kind of what scalping looks like. And you know, I know that it is a hot mess, but you know, if you kind of zoom in here, you can kind of see where I'm able to get some pretty good moves. So like, you know, in here, for example, adding into this, you know, kind of rising situation here, and then getting off a pretty good set of cells here. And then as this pulls back, makes a nice tight 1 minute flag, you know, buy, sell. In here, it's kind of hard to tell, but, you know, potentially even looking for more. And then kind of same situation, you know, I might take a couple cuts in here, trying to find what is eventually this candle right here. And then kind of, you know, very similar right here, just momentum, scalping as much as I possibly can. And, you know, thankfully right here, kind of recognizing that this is potential backside. So I ended up, you know, really not taking these trades all right here. So this is kind of what a normal day kind of looks like. And I know on, you know, an execution chart, you know, this trader view chart looks kind of crazy, but this is something that I have on my Thinkorswim, is what I just try to preach is, you know, these levels and zones and where the price is occurring on, you know, above or below these particular zones. So, you know, when I'm scalping, I'm looking to see, okay, is it above this key level? If not, you know, I'll look to wait for, you know, a retest or a trend line breakout, something like that. Here's kind of another quick example, you know, what my charts end up looking like, to be able to efficiently scalp these without just kind of going in blind.
Yeah, and on these, like obviously, I can see that you've color coded the zones as well. So, are you looking for like So, in like this example, like with orange just being, are you looking for the break through orange, or do you tend to look for it to break through orange, and then if it starts holding that zone, that's when you start looking at a flag, and then look to be real surgical with that entry for the next leg up into the next zone?
Yeah, I mean, typically what I do, like being a long bias trader, is breaking through, you know, say this level right here, breaking through it, and then finding support on it. And I mean, just almost to a T, you can see right here where it held and then continued to explode. Well, there's kind of a reason, you know, it's, you know, demand zone from here, from here, from here, all right here, you know, and even kind of tries to hold on the backside here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can already picture actually how your execution chart probably looked like on that one, which is great because that means it's good for me because I'm already picking up how you're trading. I mean, that's such a great example. And what's some of I mean, this might be I mean, it might be quite elementary, but like, what some of the levels are you looking for to draw these zones? For anyone looking to replicate this and to draw their own zones, what are you typically looking for?
Really anything that has multiple levels of confluence. Really, if it's kind of a fresh chart, I'll start on the daily and just work my way down through time frames. So, you know, if it's a day one and there's not really much information, maybe pre-market or whatever, you know, I'm looking at the daily. I'm just trying to find areas where you just have multiple instances of price reflecting off of that particular area. I mean, right here on this this yellow one would be a good example. It's wicking through, it's wicking through, wicking through. Well, it comes below it, rejects off of it, and kind of a similar situation right here. So really just trying to find as many points of contact as you can on both sides.
Yeah. And is there like a particular time of day or anything like that that's perhaps more powerful, or is everything in your eyes quite sort of equal?
I wouldn't really say time of day. I mean, obviously for momentum, like towards the open and maybe power hour is best, but with at least drawing zones and whatnot, like I do try to make sure that there's like a somewhat significant level of volume or I would mostly lean on volume to be able to gives like significance to any one level. If it's a daily level that really doesn't have much volume, then maybe it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, these pennies and these subbies recently have been doing absolutely outrageous volume. Like Foxer, I think, has done a few billion. I mean, maybe it's you guys. By the sounds of it. But I think, what did we have? We had one yesterday that I think like did 1. Cero, wasn't it?
It might have been
CERO,
Yeah.
1.4 billion, which is pretty outrageous. Cool. No, thank you. I mean, thank you for sharing that one. And I know, like, we'll share your Twitter at the end. But I know I saw that you tweet that actually the other day, and I was like, yeah, we're definitely going to mention that. Thank you both for sharing. And perhaps just to add some nuance potentially to those trades, and perhaps talk about like the environment. I mean, are either of you ever concerned with cycles, or is anything like that? Does that ever come into your thought process?
Totally. I mean, Foxo was a great one that was part of that penny cycle. And when you see names behaving that way, well, all of a sudden you start noticing that other similar stocks are behaving that way. Other pennies in a similar price range are behaving that way. Or maybe the theme is that they're SSR. And so then you find another penny that's SSR and, it's got another really strong bid. And, then maybe one of these pennies rips from 50 cents to $1. And now all these other pennies want to also complete their dollar move, yeah. So cycle and theme is 100% something that we pay attention to and we factor into what we think has potential out there. And then, on a similar note, it's recognizing when that theme and cycle is slowing down and done. I think, I had a hard time with Foxo today. It might have even been Foxo yesterday that I had a hard time with her or one of them. The behavior just totally changed. And that's kind of needs to be warning bells that, we've had a good couple of weeks of this, but, eventually the music stops. And if you don't have a chair, you can, you can get yourself in a pickle pretty quick.
Yeah, you can end up with a big bag, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So Herv, are you able to be like, because obviously after Foxo, we had WBUY. So when you see like that move in the next day, I know I can tell you both already probably get very excited, but are there opportunities perhaps to be more aggressive or to take extra size or anything like that? But after you've got, like you said, that huge Foxo move, 1 billion volume, what did it do? 20 cents all the way up to $1, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, in small caps, themes are huge. So when you see something, even if it's just trading a lot of volume, maybe it doesn't make like a crazy move, but like you mentioned with Zero, trading over 1 billion volume, like that tells you that there is a volume inflow into pennies, and you can definitely kind of decide to up your size, but also really kind of test the limits of like order quantities as well. So how, depending on the volume that's in that stock at that time, can I take 25 lots? Can I take 50 lots? Can I do more? And that's all a pretty good indicator as to how liquid it is and how many other participants are also in that name.
Mhm. And when you talk about lots, I don't know if this is going to be divulging too much info, but are you talking about like your standard block, your standard size, and how much you can get in around a price point?
Yes, yeah. So like sometimes I'll take 25,000 shares on these at a time, and try to work my way up. Or, if it's a little bit cheaper or there's just that much volume, take 50,000 shares at a time and just hit the button, as many times as you're comfortable with.
Just as many times as it'll let you. I
Yeah.
like that. No, it's funny because like all the nuances that I've taken from these cycles. So for example, like WBUI, I know that the day after Foxo, I know, as in looking from the short side, I know to be ultra patient because I know that's going to be pretty wild. It's very difficult to anticipate the range because it's kind of going to be, it's just going to be nuts. But equally, I suppose as you go through the cycle, you get that shift from it being massively probably on the longs favored to, because after WBUY we had a couple again. We had like, there was a Friday and there's quite a few, and those moves were, well, I mean, they faded, right? But I mean, that's something that I definitely need to work on, is to, instead of being patient, actually I need to be aggressive with do what you do, Herv, and just keep pressing the button till I get my size. Great, absolutely great thoughts. And I definitely think that's another intuition thing as well. I think cycles, because again, it's like, because I mean, it's very difficult because and I guess that's what's great about your style, is like looking at your Foxo trade. I guess you had, at the time, well, I mean, you tell me, like, did you have the anticipation that it could go wild? We hadn't had anything like it in a while, I think, or at least in a week or so. But did you have that anticipation that it could go wild, or was it a case of you just take it, obviously, like almost brick by brick, and then just let whatever your setup form, and then just see where it takes you?
Yeah, I mean, on that particular day, I did scalp it a lot, but on the following days, like today and yesterday, really did think that it could do more. And given the amount of volume that has been in pennies lately, and like the reclaim that Foxo had, and ended up making new daily highs, but um, you think, well, like what's stopping it from going even further? And so that's why it's also important to understand where exactly we are in the cycle. So I know that maybe we're nearing the end of the penny cycle, because things just aren't going as high and as far as we expect them to, or pull the kind of moves that you really would expect in a truly hot market. And we're kind of not getting it. We're getting a lot less follow through kind of all around at this point.
Yeah. And did either of you trade LGMK today? That's another subby as a real cheap one, because that was, I mean, I didn't even, it looked like it's, because I think we're still in a pretty good cycle in that faded pre, and then I thought it was cooked, but then actually we still took out pre-market highs.
I did not trade it. And the reason I did not trade, I did have it on watch, but the reason I did not trade it is because, Herv and I, the past couple of sessions, have felt that cycle starting to shift a little bit. And so it is time to be a little more selective, a little bit less on the gas. And because our focus at the bell was Foxo. Foxo had the bigger pattern that it was, opening right at the break level of that bigger pattern that had been putting in for 4 or 5 days. Yeah. And so, once you break that day one pivot, if this thing really wanted to stay strong, there's no reason it couldn't have gone for 2 today, so we knew that's where our focus needed to be. And we knew that's probably where most traders' focus was going to be. It just feels like this point in the cycle, some brand new name isn't just about to start its thing at 28 cents and keep going, so I stayed away from it. And then what happened was, once Foxo started punching me in the teeth, BTCT
Yeah.
halted up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, Bitcoin's strong, BTCT, tiny float, this thing's going crazy. This is where attention's going to be. We started to see sympathy rotations into other Bitcoin names. And so, well, LGMK just doesn't look attractive to a long at that point, you know?
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, I took it on the short side today, and we also had we had GNS as well today. That again, that gave up its pre-market move, and then came back and started holding up and cleared out pre-market highs. Wild stuff. I don't know if either of you traded that one as well, but that's.
I don't remember even hearing that one today.
Oh, really?
GNS.
See, you guys are too busy. I suppose that's the great thing about yourself. Like, if you're still taking so many trades. You're in you are trading a setup where you're just gonna. I suppose it's just inevitable that you're gonna miss some because you're so active anyway that it's just impossible to get them all.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say this GNS one, looking at it, it had such low volume. It got one volume pop in pre-market, but then the volume completely went away. Even after the bell, I mean, it was only averaging like 75,000 volume per minute. And that's a little lower, especially near the open, than we're going to pay any attention to.
Yeah.
It randomly, I mean, I say random, it randomly caught some volume middle of the day and ripped, but
I think
yeah,
it had. I don't. I think it was a. It was. I don't know if it was a PR, but it was something.
okay.
Something came out, and then all of a sudden, yeah, it ripped again.
Yeah, I was away from my setup during lunchtime, so it could have been that it was starting to hit the scanner during that time. That's why I didn't have it on my radar.
Mm-hmm. No, okay, no, brilliant. No, thank you. I mean, it's been so great chatting to you guys. I mean, I got so much time for. I've got time for anyone with any sort of setup and how they make trading work. But there's something about the way you guys do it that I just absolutely love. And to be honest, I'm very jealous of that for sure. Just a couple last questions to finish it up. What does the future look like for this style of trade? I suppose, what does it look like for you two? Are you always going to be hands-on, or are you looking perhaps to automate it? Do you see any restrictions or any limitations of this style in the future, and perhaps any developments that you two want to make moving forward?
Go ahead, Herv.
I mean, it is 100% broker dependent. Like we said earlier, with TD Ameritrade, before it became Schwab, there was the order limits. So, if order limits start to become a thing again, then that could change how we trade, how well we get filled. Price improvement is actually a pretty big thing while using Schwab. And so, if that price improvement kind of goes away, then that also changes things. And then, fees and commissions, if those go up, it's, not going to entice us to take as many trades if it's costing us more. So those are the three things that I know could be a deterrent in the future. But I will say it is very mentally taxing. Pressing that button, staring at the tape in level 2, just being so zoned in for so long, it's mentally taxing. So, me personally, that is why I would love to transition to something, a little bit longer hold times and swings as well. Um, but as long as it pays, to always be a part of my, toolkit.
Yeah, mate. Hey, while the sun is shining, yeah, absolutely. Both anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think those are all concerns that we have. There's also liquidity concerns. So, you get up to a certain size if you want to keep growing and making more and more money. Eventually, a lot of these names just can't support the size. Like, I'll trade really thin things right now, and I'm just only if I'm trying to make $300, $500, even 1,000. Sometimes I can hope that I'm the only trader out there that's smacking this setup so that I'm not fighting with anyone else. But a lot of these things are just too thin to be worth a lot of people's times once you get to be a little bit bigger account and you want to take bigger lots. So there's that. But the other thing, while those are concerns, when I think ahead about if we got hit with any one of those challenges that Herv mentioned, one thing that I think every trader develops when they find their edge is adaptability. I think that's one thing that we all have in common that have longevity, is that we're able to adapt to things that change. And the way that you can best see that is, now that I have a profitable edge, I can take that foundation that some of the foundational concepts are going to be true for any strategy that you try. So I'm having success trying new strategies because I'm just applying the foundations I've learned from my main strategy, and I can, find profitability in a new edge quicker. And so I do think that we can overcome those challenges in certain ways if we were to run into them. But I agree with Herv. I mean, and we have been doing this on the side. Herv is trading swings. He's finding daily setups and putting positions on and trading swings. And I've got investments this year that I've been taking more size on, and a couple of other longer term strategies where I'm holding stuff for days and weeks. And so yeah, it's expanding the playbook to include those. And I would love to never have to replace what I do intraday with scalping. I would love to always have that in my tool belt. But if I don't, then we just cross that bridge when it comes.
Yeah, I mean, well, hopefully you do. And just to wrap things up, someone watching this someone finding out about hyperscalping for the first time watching this, what would you recommend they do tomorrow, just to try and put a bow on everything tonight? What's the first step tomorrow?
What I would say is just record your screen. I use the OBS software. And so, you pull up the hot ticker of the day, record your screen, watch, and then do that over and over. Go back and watch how, the price starts to move, how the tape moves, if you have any patterns that you were watching, or trend lines or whatever, really being able to go back and review that stuff at like half speed or quarter speed or whatever, like that's a real superpower, just being able to record your screen, go back, watch this over and over and ingrain that in your mind. And the next time you see that, you're going to start to make those connections. And then, yeah, just start putting in the reps and, try to understand really what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Scalping could just really be a personality thing, so don't try to force it if it's not, working after some time.
Yeah, brilliant. No, very well said. And very, very lastly, where can the audience find you both? I guess Twitter, right?
Yeah. At Herv Trades is mine.
Yeah, and I'm at Bofo Momo.
Bofo Momo, right? Brilliant. Bofo Momo and Herv Trades, thank you so much for your time. I mean, you must be exhausted. We're recording this just after the market closed. It sounds like you've had a relentless start to the week. I just want to thank you. Absolutely enlightening, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. So thank you both so much, and yeah, best to you both, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks Sam.
So much,
it was a pleasure.
Yeah, guys, thank you very much.
See ya.
Thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of Trading Takes. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please check out some of others with some great traders. Thank you for watching.